So I was saying that two important figures which are related to existentialism are Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus. So Simone de Beauvoir also has an important role to play, but then um, she has diverse contributions. Okay, so she is equally known for her contribution to first wave feminism. Okay, so existentialism as a philosophical trend began in 1940s and 50s. Okay, so you might recall that these were also the times of Second World War, right? That has very close connection with existentialism and rise of existentialism. So other names who are related with existentialism are highlighted over here in green: Karl Jaspers, Martin Heidegger, Martin Buber in Germany, John Wall. These are the major names, right? And then over here, there are some precursors to 19th century. They are Kierkegaard and Friedrich Nietzsche. Uh, Now, this here is something interesting that I just mentioned right in the beginning, which is the literary, source of existentialism. Now, as the writer of this reading puts it, existentialism was much a literary phenomenon as a philosophical one. So Sartre wrote nausea and no exit. So nausea basically is a narrative. It is a literary narrative. Some people call it a novel, and rightly so. So Sartre would uh, kind of elaborate his philosophy of existentialism through a novel, through a narrative. And that makes it really interesting for students of literature to understand a philosophical development through a literary text. And that is how existentialism also becomes a lens to read other texts. Okay, so when you use any philosophy as a philosophical lens to read other texts, that is precisely what is called literary theory or critical theory. So the other writers, literary writers who were influenced by existentialism and who uh, translated existentialism into literary texts are Dostoevsky, Ibsen, and Kafka. At the same time, these writers are highly, uh, radical writers. They broke away with the established trends in Europe, in Russia, or in Germany, wherever they belong to. They introduced, new uh, literary trends as well. That is, they introduced new ways of writing. They introduced new kinds of characters. They introduced the characters which radically broke away with the traditional societies. And then, equally important is another group of writers in existentialism, which are Samuel Beckett. I'm sure some of you are aware of his literary texts, his plays, and then Eugene Ionesco, right? Uh, so they wrote the famous plays, which together are called part of theater of absurd, right? So theater of absurd is also said to be a literary development of existentialism, right? So the writers like Samuel Beckett and Ionesco, they therefore just followed the footsteps of existentialist philosophers. So there are some filmmakers as well who experimented with existentialism, right? Okay, so let's come down to uh, a few definitions of existentialism. Okay, so if you are with me on this page, let's read just this part over here. So the phenomenological approach gave philosophical shape to the basic existentialist insight that thinking about human existence requires new categories, not found in the conceptual repertoire of the ancient or modern thought. Human beings can be understood neither as substances with fixed properties nor as subjects interacting with a world of objects. Now, there is a very strong connection between this statement which I never highlighted and the very first line in this reading. Now, basically, existentialism uh, is demanding that human existence or existence in general should n- not be understood in the terms which we are aware of. Now, what are the terms which we were aware of before 1940s and 50s? The two broader terms which we were aware of and which we partly discussed with reference to Karl Marx as well, those two broader terms are mind and body dualism. That is, there has been an established way to look at human existence in the sense of the physical body that we all have and an intellectual abstraction that we all have. And the philosophers have been contemplating which of these two influence the other one. So, is it the body, the physical body, the substance of the body, and the properties based upon that substance which determine our mind, our thinking process, our intellect, or is it the intellect or thinking process or mind which kind of shapes the body? For existentialism, to understand existentialism, we can say that the two categories we were aware of were rationalism on the one hand and empiricism on the other hand. I'm sure most of you are aware of the term rationalism. I mean, we use this word rational uh, so much in our day-to-day conversation that we should be able to make sense of it, real quick. So rationalism uh, rationalizes all phenomenon. In other words, rationalism propagates that uh, all phenomena could be understood through the use of uh, rationale, right, or through the use of logic, right, and where does that happen? That happens in human mind, so to say, right? The logic. Uh, we had lot many proponents of logic and rationalism in Greece, in Greek philosophy. So the logic kind of uh, determines human life, human existence, and thereby logic determines our understanding of human life and human existence. And also logic dictates our understanding of this world and the universe, right? So the logic is kind of at the center of all human activity, right? Because it is through that we understand everything which is non-human as well, right? So rationalism, that is one category to understand human existence. The other category to understand human existence is positivism, right? So the so empiricism, right? Positive is an offshoot of that. So empiricism that believes in human senses. That is, human senses are source of knowledge for all of us. So empirical reality is the reality which can be tested, which can be experimented, right? Which can be observed and gauged through human senses, right? So human senses, as we are aware of them, which is eye and ears and touch and so on, all of them are part of the substance of human body, and the better they function, the deeper knowledge of human existence we might have. So this is the other category of understanding human existence, which is empiricism. So empiricism and rationalism, they seem to be two categories which kind of oppose each other, right? Now that is the background. Now as far as existentialism is concerned, it challenges these dual categories as 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 a valid way or as a valid channel to understand human existence. So if we read on from here, on the existential view, to understand what a human being is, it is not enough to know all the truths that natural science, including the science of psychology, would tell us. The dualist who holds that human beings are composed of independent substances, that is, mind and body, right? Two separate substances, is no better off in this regard than is the uh, physicalist who holds that human existence can be adequately explained in terms of the fundamental physical constituents of the universe, right? So the other category, based upon the primary category that I explained to you, is that of psychology, the study of psychology, the study of human mind, and kind of physicology, physicalist. So psychologist versus physicalist. Psychologist is the one who believes that all problems are because of the mind, while physicalist would say that all problems are because of the body, right? So this is again that same mind body duality. But existentialist view will deny that any of these two views is a valid view to understand human existence. Of course, existentialism does not deny the categories of physics, biology, psychology, other sciences. Categories such as matter, causality, force, function, organism development, motivation, and so on. Right? So it's not about denying them. They do exist in their own right. But here is its claim. It claims only that human beings cannot be fully understood in terms of them, nor can such an understanding be gained by supplementing our scientific picture with a moral one. Categories of moral theory such as intention, blame, responsibility, character, duty, virtue, and the like do capture important aspects of the human condition, but neither moral thinking, governed by the norms of the good and the right, nor scientific thinking, governed by the norm of truth, suffices. Right? So once again, these are the same categories we have been talking about previously. Right? So what is moral thinking? Again, moral thinking is what takes place in our mind. Okay, so these all of these things take place in our mind: intention, blame, responsibility, character, human character, duty, sense of duty, virtue. uh, all these are categories of human mind, right? They are categories of human psychology, right? So they are not enough to understand human existence. Similarly, the scientific thinking is not enough to understand human uh, existence. And the scientific thinking is once again empiricism. So here we come to a cursory definition, an initial definition of existentialism. So existentialism therefore may be defined as the philosophical theory which holds that a further set of categories governed by the norm of authenticity is necessary to grasp human existence. To approach existentialism in this categorical way may seem to conceal what is often taken to be its heart, namely its character as a gesture of protest against academic philosophy, its anti-system sensibility, its fight from the iron cage of reason. But while it is true that the major existential philosophers wrote with a passion and urgency rather uncommon in our own time, and while the idea that philosophy cannot be practiced in the disinterested manner of an objective science is indeed central to existentialism, it is equally true that all the themes popularly associated with existentialism, dread, boredom, alienation, the absurd, freedom, commitment, nothingness, and so on, find their philosophical significance in the context of the search for a new categorical framework together with its governing norm. Right? So, the central word or central expression in existential philosophy is authenticity. Now, problem with the duality view about human existence, which is either we believe that human mind controls or determines human existence, or human body determines human existence. The problem with that, according to existentialist view, is that neither of these views guarantees the authenticity of human existence. So what is the authenticity of human existence? So the rationalist way of looking at the life, for example, does not come in its purity. Similarly, the empiricist view to look at the life does not come in its purity. For example, if we claim to dictate our morality, our sense of morality, to look at the world, we cannot totally deny the interference made by our body. And when we use our body, which is our five senses or empiricism, to look at the world, it's not that we can use it in its purity. Rather, whatever the thinking process is, it intervenes with empirical view of the world. So neither mind exists in its purity, nor the body exists in its purity. So the duality between both of them, or the line that we draw between both of them, between mind and body, that line at its best is an artificial line. That is the existentialist view of these two categories of human life. Therefore, existentialism proposes a third possibility. And the third possibility is this, that instead of pretending that human mind could be enough to understand the world, or instead of pretending that the human physical experience could give us the total truth, instead of having both of these pretensions, the human figure should instead seek authentic experience. So both of the above categories, they seek truth using any one of the categories of truth seeking process. And that truth is too abstract to be fully grasped ever. So let's not look for the truth. That is a futile practice. That is futile, one, because we can never reach it, but two, because the channels which are available to us to reach the truth, those channels are not available in their pure form. So can you, for example, imagine ever that human mind could exist independent of all physical tendencies that we have, right? Nobody can think totally rationally. Why? Because your emotions would always influence the way you think, right? Similarly, nobody can use the human senses in the pure form, because the way you think also determines your senses, right? So the purity of the channels of seeking knowledge, their purity is impossible. Therefore, the other norm which existentialists introduced was the authentic experience, authenticity of human existence, authenticity of human self. So what is that? Basically, as Saath would, elaborated with reference to that book Nausea, which is a novel. The protagonist in the novel Nausea uh, is a male character, and he, keeps moving, uh, through different parts of France, as we, understand it, as far as the geographical context is concerned. And while observing various, objects around him, and while observing various people around him, and while interacting with various people around him, this character has this unique feeling that the that the character or the protagonist is under the uh, influence of nausea. You know the word nausea, right? the the medical symptom. And and this is a very surprising characteristic which Sartre was giving to his character. And it looks little ridiculous as well, that the character is, for example, sitting in a park and looking at the tree, a big huge tree, and just looking into the tree for a while gives him a nauseatic feeling. And then this nauseatic feeling overcomes the character over and over again in the whole of the narrative. Now, neither the mind theory of human existence explains what is happening to him, nor body theory of human self or human existence explains what is happening to that protagonist. But Sartre would stay adamant to, you know, advance this character, this protagonist, just through this kind of experience, the experience of feeling nauseatic at everything around him, which in other words means Sartre was advancing a protagonist who had a nauseatic experience of the existence around him. So when you have nauseatic experience with or nauseatic experience of the whole existence around you, whatever that means, one thing that Saath would try to convey us or was trying to convey to us was that whatever the meaning of that nausea was, one thing that is very hard to deny was that that nauseatic feeling or that nauseatic experience of that protagonist was an authentic experience because it was rooted in the experience of that particular character. So you don't have to invoke any philosophy or any theory of mind or theory of body to understand what is happening to him. Well, that is what was happening, and you need to acknowledge that at its face value. So for that particular character in the novel, all existence was nauseatic, right? Now, is his understanding of the existence true? I mean, if we want to ask that question, existentialist will tell us, yes, that is true. We will ask, well, how will that be true? Existentialist will tell us because this is his experience. And it is his experience which authenticates the way the world is. You don't need any external parameter to gauge the authenticity, right? Now, this kind of, view of human existence, where we are seeking not the truth, but authenticity, that raises quite a number of problems for the rest of the philosophical thoughts. I highlighted them in Think. So, in this, you know, philosophical way to look at the world, there is a very strong protest against academic philosophy as it existed before existentialism. So there is a tendency of anti-system sensibility in existentialism, and there is a tendency to break the iron cage of reason through this, existentialist philosophy. So why is it anti-system? Because existentialism does not uh, shape human perception to look at the world from a certain perspective. It does not do that. Rather, it allows the character to jump into the reality himself and experience it at its face value. Similarly, existentialism does not invoke human reason or human rationale or rationality to predetermine how humans should behave or how humans should think of the world around him or around her. Rather, human being, a human being, is entitled to break the fake uh, pretension of being a reasoned human being. Well, we are not. We all are not equally reasoned human being, right? Some of us are more emotional, and some of us are less emotional, right? Therefore, each one of us should have our own way to authenticate our existence through our own experience. Now, this philosophy, therefore, had some of the not drawbacks, but its negative consequences as well. It produced, some of the themes like dread, boredom, alienation, absurd, freedom, commitment, and nothingness. Now, all these themes related to existentialism, they are kind of after effects of existentialist way to look at the world and the life. So one essential consequence of having the existentialist view is the dread, the fear. What are you afraid of? You are afraid of the absence of any meaning. Why? Because when you are looking at the world from existentialist perspective, you basically are uh, freeing yourself of the pre-given ways of looking at the world. You are not ready to take the pre-made systems or pre-made perceptions to understand the world. You set them aside, you remove them, and you look at the world afresh. And when you do that, the immediate consequence is the fear of not understanding what is around you.